watching the news channel for Southern Nevada, KLAS-TV, Channel 8, Las Vegas.
Hello, I'm Paula Francis. After a 32-year career at KLAS-TV 8 News Now, Gary Waddell decided to turn in his reporter's pad and take his leave. For the rest of us, it was a sad moment because the station will not be the same without him. But we couldn't be happier for Gary, who has been such a dedicated and hard-working newsman and deserves some fun. He's already on a motorcycle trip as we speak. Just before he cleaned out his desk, Gary shared some of his career highlights in this special interview. I hope you enjoy it.
Call me Gary.
Gary.
You can call me Gary, thank you.
Okay. I have all these things to talk about.
It looks like the playbook of the offensive coordinator of the NFL.
That's who I am.
Oh,
you thought I was someone else. Anyway, all these honors that are going to unwrap, culminating on August 3rd, your retirement.
Yes.
How are you feeling about that?
Embarrassed, self-conscious, a little out of my element. You know, I've told you, and I told Emily when we talked, and she said, how do you want to do this? And I said, I just want to go on vacation and never come back. And then a couple of weeks later, somebody will call Imelda at the switchboard and say, where's Gary? I haven't seen him in a while. And she'll say, oh, he doesn't work here anymore. And that, you know, that's the end of it. That's how I wanted to go. Yeah. That's really how I wanted to go. You
have never wanted to be the center of attention, which to me makes you the ultimate newsman. It's about the news.
Thank you. I don't know where to go with that, but thank you. Yeah. I mean, I really have felt that way. I mean, it's not me. It's just, it's what we're doing. It's what we've been bringing home for 20-some years.
Yeah. Are you proud of what you've done?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, I've never watched it.
I know.
Can you believe I've never watched myself? I've never seen myself on television. Well, you know, I mean, occasionally it's in the monitor as you walk by someplace, but I've never sat down and watched myself on television. I feel very uncomfortable doing that, and I will not like this when it plays somewhere, you know. When I got the Mark Twain Hall of Fame award, I said my advice to all the young people was to burn the tapes. So you don't have to live with those younger tapes for years and years and years to come. So,
really?
Yeah. But I really just kind of wanted to just quietly go away.
We were paired up the first day of the first Gulf War.
Gary and Paula, and that's what I get out on the street every day. You know, I mean, people come up to you, watch you and Paula all the time, and you know, you're leaving. What about Paula? You know, and I say, oh, wait, she's staying.
When I started working with you, and of course I'm going to make myself cry, but I'm prepared for that.
Oh, don't cry. I wanted to steal off into the night.
You were the big deal. The big deal. And for me to sit next to you, and for you to interact with me as though I was even remotely on your level, was the greatest compliment you could pay me. And it has been so much fun.
Well, that's very nice. That's nice of you to say. I never thought of myself that way.
You give work meaning, and you make it fun.
Well, yeah. Why did you start with this?
Sorry.
No, that's all right.
I'll move on.
That's
I'm ready
all right.
to move on.
No, and you're the big deal. I mean, you are too, and I never thought otherwise.
We see the world the same way.
But from day one, I never thought otherwise.
Thanks.
You know, I mean, when you sat down, you were
This interview is not about me, Gary.
No. Well, wait a minute.
Yeah, don't be turning the tables. I know you'd rather do that.
I got a whole bunch of questions here, and we got a little time. So.
I know you would rather do that. Let's talk about some of those huge, huge stories. Of course, the Mgm Fire.
Yeah, that was about 3 months after I got here. It sort of changed the world, but it also was an amazing time because we weren't equipped like we are now. We didn't have all these live trucks. We didn't have satellite trucks. We didn't have tape. We didn't have internet. We couldn't send pictures back and forth that way. None of that existed. So it was really amazing time to do that kind of stuff. The magnitude of the story and the days and the days and the days after that story hung on, and we learned more about it and more about what happened to people and how they dealt with it and talked to the people who were in the place when it happened.
Horrifying.
It was just amazing. And then in February, 2 months later, 3 months later, the fire at the Las Vegas Hilton, which was very similar, where people died, people hanging out the window, swinging lanterns to let people know they were in the room and come save me, and those kind of things. And out of that, and I've said this a number of times, out of that grew regulations and building codes and building plans that changed the world.
Made this the safest city to stay in a hotel.
Absolutely. Well, I don't know that it is anymore. I think every city has become that because all of these regulations have gone around the world, you know.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I mean, Bangkok, Thailand is probably a lot safer because of what they learned that day, unfortunately.
When you ad-lib now, you're just the greatest. And it's everyone's dream to be able to ad-lib the way you do. But a lot of it is informed by your history, your knowledge of this city and Nevada and the world at large. When you didn't know Las Vegas that well, what was it like ad-libbing about the MGM?
But the latest reports are that the fire is out.
It was hard, and it still is not easy to do. You know, you kind of draw on it, but you know, my mom always said that my first word was not mom or mother. My first word was why. And my folks used to always complain to me about, well, just it is, you know. But I would always want to know how things worked, why things worked, how that happened, and that kind of stuff. So I was always curious. And I think if I could instill that in anybody else in my life, that curiosity, it has been what I've tried to be about my whole life. And a lot of that is just remembering things and wondering, you know, why does this road work this way, or why does this happen there, or, you know, where things are.
The big picture.
Yeah, and it's just, and part of it is just being here so long, you know. It's easy that way. Yeah, well, yeah, to me, you know.
No,
I still get lost in Summerlin, but you know, aside from that, I'm all right.
That's specially designed that way.
Gary has done so much for our community. He's almost as old as we are, and it's good that you're retiring. You are synonymous with the word TV and news, and you will always be very much a part of our lives, and I certainly can speak for our family, except for this former mayor, and tell you we will miss you, and hopefully you'll do guest appearances.
Yes, as the president of the chapter of the Hells Angels.
The president did some politicking of his own today with members of the House, and it paid off. And in this half hour...
Katrina, you slept on the ground.
Yeah, that was interesting.
This morning's Nevada delegation meeting, much of the discussion was not of politics, but of logistics.
How about your conventions? 1988, you went and reported on the convention in Atlanta.
And the one thing about the Atlanta convention was that we went and we were in the hotel with some of the Nevada delegation, and we had a car. So we took some of them to Ebenezer Baptist Church on a Sunday morning. Which is Martin Luther King's church. And, you know, and we covered the convention. It was Bill Clinton's first speech to a national audience. We got to stand up there with the Nevada delegation and watch his speech, the first one, because, you know, he didn't get nominated until 4 years after that he got nominated. And then the Chicago convention, because I was in Chicago in '68 and I was in Grant Park with the whole world watching as a reporter in Grant Park, and I didn't get beat up, but a lot of friends of mine did. You know, to go back to Chicago for the first convention, the first Democratic convention in Chicago after that was really interesting, and to stand in Grant Park and remember the things that happened there, and to stand on the convention floor and remember the chaos that was that convention that Mayor Daley ran with the iron hand. And it was really interesting to go back and see both of those things.
But that was momentous.
It really was. It was that Democratic convention in '68 was an event that changed time and changed the world, and to go back to that, you know, and go back to Chicago and think about that and remember what happened in the late '60s. And
I knew it would be difficult for you to talk about your own reactions to these things. You always prefer to talk about the event itself, and no, don't defend it. I love that. Katrina. You slept on the ground.
Yeah, that was interesting. It really was.
A tough physical assignment.
It was tough. I slept on the ground for 2 weeks. I had a little roll-up mat about this wide and about that thick, that, you know, sort of foam that we took with us. We were following Task Force 1, and we were supposed to sort of be embedded with them. Mm-hmm. You know, 2005, everybody knew what embedding with a unit meant. You know, it was done in Iraq, and it was, you know, we knew all about that. So we should have been doing that. Well, when we got down there, for some reason or another, there was none of that. We were not going to embed. We were on our own out here, fend for yourself. Luckily, we took a bunch of MREs, but every night we would come back from covering Task Force 1, and they were going into the neighborhoods in tanks to go hunt for people out in the neighborhoods, out in the lower 9th Ward and places like that, where they would go into houses and put the mark on the front door to say that they'd been there, that there was nobody there, and they found some bodies and they found some people alive and rescued them. So anyhow, we did that, but to sleep in that parking lot on the ground in Metairie, Louisiana, right across from the entrance to the training camp for the New Orleans Saints, where all the troops were based, because we were going to be in there. Well, we just had our MREs and what water we could get. And then there was a little gas station, mini-mart, down the street from where we were staying that for some reason or another was open, had a generator, had electricity, and was pumping gas. Wow. They got resupplied with gas. Apparently they were providing gas for some people who needed it. Well, we bought it. In the daytime, the lines were down the block and around the corner, and people with AR-15s were guarding it to make sure there weren't fights over the gas and all that. But when they went home at night, the pumps were still on for credit cards. So I'd take our van down and fill it up and bring it back. Well, one night I went down, toward the end of my stay down there in Metairie, I went down and the little store was still open. There were lights on, a couple of people in the little store. So I went in, and there was nothing on the shelves. I mean, a loaf of bread maybe, and this and that, but nothing else. So I walked back to the cooler, and there were 6 beers, 6 bottles of beer back there.
Like gold.
Yeah, there were like a couple of Buds and a Miller and a Corona and something else. I don't know what it was. So I put them all in the little paper carton, and I carried it up to the front, and I said to the guy, "What do you want for it?" I think he said $5 or something. There was no cash register running or anything. So I gave him $5, and I took this little variety pack of beer back to the Metairie, back to our parking lot in Metairie. So after we got done with all our feeds, back to you guys here, we sat down, and a few of us had a beer or two, and it was the first we'd had in a long time. And I just got thinking that, as far as I know, since nothing else that was open, I think that night we drank New Orleans dry. It was, as far as I know, the last booze that was available that night in New Orleans. Many people have tried that. No one has succeeded.
And I bet you were the most popular guy on the crew.
We had a couple who didn't drink beer, so you know, I didn't gain any sway with them at all. So, but it was fun.
We also interviewed Clinton.
That was fun. That was a satellite interview. It was right here in this room.
It was great.
And we brought in people from other stations, radio stations, newspapers. The way it worked, because it was in our station, because we were providing the facilities, you got the first question, and I got the last question. So I agonized, again, all night long about what am I going to ask him, because it's probably going to be asked by the time it gets to me.
All the obvious ones.
So I don't remember what all we asked, but I remember my last question to him, to Clinton, was when he was running for re-election after being in the White House for 4 years. And I said, "Are you having fun?"
I remember that.
And he talked a little about, yes, I enjoy it, it's a challenge, you know, all these kind of things. And then not long after that, we learned about Monica Lewinsky. And we realized what was going on in the White House and how much different that question seemed to me at that point.
You didn't mean that kind of fun.
I had no idea, but it certainly took on a hold. I'm sure that, you know, went in his head somewhere, you know, when I asked that question.
How do you think the news has changed since that time span has kind of changed? I mean, you can't just take a film canister and throw it on the air.
No, you can't, although we did. You know, I mean, editing to us sometimes was, let's roll that and see what we get. My favorite line, I think, is Don Hewitt's when he talks about 60 Minutes and the reason for 60 Minutes, and that is, tell me a story. And from then to today, that is still the hallmark of this business.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe me, sit and watch one of George Knapp's 6-minute stories, and you're just enthralled, and you would not get up in the middle of it. So
Yeah.
those are the kind of things, you know, tell me a story.
Bartender is back.
For millions. You'd be surprised.
KLAS-TV 8, Las Vegas, where news comes first. Now, Gary Waddell, George Knapp. This is Eyewitness News 8.
President Reagan is resting at his California ranch tonight after having quite a day.
Good evening, I'm Gary Waddell.
And I'm George Knapp.
You used to anchor with George.
I did. That was kind of fun. And the favorite story, which George tells, and it is true, no one believes it. George and I always got mistaken for one another. You and I never did, but George and I would always get, even to this day, we get mistaken. I get called George's name in the supermarket and where I go places, and he gets me other places. So we were sitting at a table across from one another at the food court at a mall, and a girl walked by, and she looked at George, and she said, "You're Gary Waddell." And, you know, we'd gotten to know where we just say, "Oh, okay, hi." Yeah. And she walked past, she turned, and she looked at me, and she said, "And you're him, too." And that may be why George and I didn't work together, anchoring together. So, although we were great friends and we got along wonderfully, and it was a lot of fun to do because he's so fun to be around, but it was, you know, we may have needed a little more contrast.
Yeah. You know, people ask me a lot, and I do love it when people come up and talk to me. You love that
absolutely.
too. I've seen you get engaged with total strangers.
You can probably count on both hands the number of people who actually suck the life out of you, you know. But most people have been just so nice over the years.
Yeah.
They come up and talk, and they want to talk about the news, or they want to talk about you, or they want to talk about other people in the newsroom, or you know, that kind of stuff. And it's just, it's so nice. It really is. And if that goes away, and I'm sure it will one of these days, I'm going to miss that probably as much as anything.
Yeah.
You know, just not being
because of the fame,
not being a celebrity, but just because it helps you. You know, all of a sudden you meet people and you talk when you would not normally interchange with those people.
Yeah. What will you miss about coming to work, if anything?
Being in the middle of what's going on. You know, I changed when you and I stopped anchoring together all the time. Was when I moved to days and doing the noon and the 4 and the 6 for a while, and I thought I would hate it. Because I did like the night shift. I really enjoyed it, and I was on it for 20-some years. But you know, the one thing I've liked about being on the day shift is that that's when things are happening.
Yes.
And that's when I can come out here and say, you know, here's what's going on, folks, and we've got this breaking news, and that's what's happening, and that's been, you know, that's been really fun to do, and I feel like we make a difference to people when we do that. You know, I get it as often as anything else that when bad things are happening, you and Paula make me feel like it's going to be okay. I will miss that.
I think that's the most important thing we do.
I'll miss that. I will. So.
Okay, I think we better stop.
Are we done?
Unless there's something else you'd like to talk about.
Well, I would like.
Why don't you?
I would
freelance here.
I would like to talk about you and how, you know, I mean, we sat together for 20 years, and it's been just, you know, it's been wonderful, and you know, we both have our separate personalities, but in a way, it's almost been a forced marriage.
Yes.
I mean, we spend as much time together sometimes, or we did, as you and your husband spend together, and and yet, you know, there's not the intimacy of a love marriage there, but it's this marriage and the time we've spent together, and you know, it's been amazing.
And we have to make compromises, work together, be a team,
and don't always agree.
No.
And you know, and that's
most of the time.
But we've always remained friends at the end of the day, I hope.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
So. But I'm really going to miss being in. I'm really going to miss being in the center of the action when
that's why we're
the
here,
world's
isn't
ending.
It?
You know, I mean, not the world's ending, but you know, when something is happening, to be in the middle of it, that I will miss.
You can always come in and help.
Emily mentioned that to me, so maybe that will happen. So
yeah, I think you'd be very valuable. Well, I think the easiest way I could wrap this up without crying again would be to ask you, for those people, those young people who have stayed to the end of this interview on the internet, if they do that, What would you say to somebody thinking about going into broadcast
Oh, I joke. I say, you know, get a real job and do all that kind of stuff. But I think we've done good work. I think it makes a difference. I think that keeping an eye on what they're doing, you know, keeping an eye on the elected officials,
yes,
and keeping them honest. It is an honorable profession, and it is something that has to be done. Yeah. And if we stop, I mean, if we quit, if the I-team doesn't exist anymore because television changes or something, you know, we're all going to be poorer for it.
Yes.
We've got it, you know, the light of day. I've always thought the light of day on stuff was better than, you know, scurrying around in the night somewhere. So, yeah, it's a great profession, and I always joke I have no other marketable skills. I don't know what I would have done if I couldn't do this, but it's been fascinating. But I would encourage anybody to tell stories.
Well, Channel 8 has been lucky.
So have I. So have I. I mean, why do you know, I wouldn't be here for 32 years if it hadn't been a great place to be and if it hadn't had great people around. So it's important.
Gary Waddell is like the Walter Cronkite of Southern Nevada.
Gary's the role model. He's the guy that you look at and say, I want to be just like him.
Congratulations on an absolutely stellar career. I know you got some open road ahead of you. Have a great time, brother.
Call me Gary. Call me Gary.